Someone had just made a joke about my handwriting looking like a raccoon wrote it during a seizure. I didn't laugh. Not because it wasn't funny, but because it wasn't the joke that hurt. It was the echo of her laughter in it. The way she looked at me after, like I was the slowest animal in a pack, the one you leave behind when the predators get close. I stood near the snack table, holding a paper plate with untouched shrimp skewers, staring at the dip like it had the answers. I counted the seconds between her laughs. 7, then 10, then 6, and I noticed she only laughed when he spoke. He, being the tall, bearded guy in the leather jacket who wasn't introduced to me. The one who brought whiskey, not wine. The one she was now calling Nico, like it had a flavor to it. No one cared that I was there. Correction, I think they forgot. That's the thing about parties where everyone knows everyone but you. You're not even a guest. You're a placeholder. A blurry background character in someone else's night. I made the mistake of opening my mouth. Hey Darcy, remember the little ceramic frog from? But she was mid-sip of some green cocktail and cut me off with a laugh so sharp it sliced right through my sentence. Oh my God, Thad, not the frog story again. She turned to Nico. He thinks it's hilarious. Like, peak comedy. They laughed. Together. Like I wasn't even there. I blinked hard. I don't know what clicked. Maybe it was her tone. Or the third time she said something to the group that started with, Thad once thought. Or maybe it was the way my throat burned without even having a drink. Whatever it was, I didn't say a word. I placed the paper plate on the edge of the table, adjusted my stupid, thrifted cardigan, stepped between two people I didn't know. One of them accidentally bumped my shoulder but didn't even look at me, and I walked to the front door. I opened it and paused. I didn't slam it. I didn't turn around. I just stepped outside, quiet, controlled, and gently closed it behind me. The laughter stopped. That's the part that keeps playing in my head. Not the jokes, not the way her hand was on another man's knee, but the silence after I left. The collective realization that the guy they'd been mocking was gone. That's when her jokes ended. What none of them knew, what Darcy still doesn't know, is that while she was too busy being entertaining, I had already seen the messages. The ones she thought she deleted. This wasn't about jokes anymore. This was about war. I didn't walk far that night. Just sat on the curb outside the party, elbows on my knees, watching people's laughter seep through the windows like smoke from a house I no longer lived in. My breath fogged up in the cool air. I wasn't even sure what I was waiting for. Maybe I thought she'd notice. That she'd come running out, eyes wide, realizing she'd crossed some invisible line. That maybe, just maybe, I mattered enough to chase after. But no one came. I sat there for 16 minutes. I counted. People stepped outside to vape or argue or flirt in hushed voices. Not one of them noticed me. I was just part of the sidewalk. Eventually, I stood up, walked to my car, and just sat in the driver's seat, staring at the steering wheel like it might give me directions on what to do next. That was when I remembered her phone. Earlier that morning, she had left it charging in the kitchen while she showered. It lit up once. Then again. Then again. Same name. Over and over. Nico. I stared at the screen for a full minute before I picked it up. I knew I shouldn't. I've never been that guy. But something about the way she laughed with him lately. I just needed confirmation that I wasn't crazy. I didn't expect to find anything. I genuinely hoped I wouldn't. But when I opened the messages, it was like stepping into a room that had been on fire for days. Everything smelled like betrayal. It wasn't even about the nudes, though yes, there were those too. It was the tone, the intimacy, the inside jokes, the way she called him my escape, the way she talked about me like I was a burden, a responsibility, some poor lost puppy who kept following her home. I couldn't even scroll past the third message. I dropped the phone like it had burned my hand. She didn't even notice I'd moved it when she came out of the shower. Just smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and asked if I wanted oatmeal. That's what broke me, I think. The normalcy. The casual way she switched between mocking me in texts and acting like nothing was wrong over breakfast. And now here I was, in my car, outside a party where she had once again used me as comedy material. Nico had been there, of course, leaning in close, sharing looks they didn't think I could see, whispering things that made her bite her lip and smile, a smile she hadn't given me in months. I had known something was off for a while, but I didn't want to believe it. I kept telling myself I was just being insecure, that Darcy was just more social than me, that she just had a sense of humor I didn't understand. But it wasn't a joke anymore. It was all real. The emotional affair. The physical one. The planned weekend trip she told me was for a client meeting, but that she'd clearly spent with him. I'd even found a picture. Her in a hotel mirror, with someone else's jacket draped on the chair behind her. It wasn't mine. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I didn't scream or pack a bag. I didn't even cancel our shared streaming subscriptions like I had fantasized. I was still in the observing stage, watching her, listening to the way she twisted the knife with a smile, letting her think I was still too naive to bleed. But something had changed after I walked out of that party. She hadn't texted, hadn't called, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't worried. She didn't care where I went. But I did. I was starting to plan exactly where I would go next. And more importantly, what I would take with me when I left. She thought the joke was over, but it hadn't even started yet. The morning after the party, she didn't even ask where I'd gone. She rolled over in bed, stretched like a cat, and yawned into her pillow. I stood in the doorway, just watching her. Not with love, not with longing, but with the cold clarity of someone finally done being fooled. She looked at me and smiled, like everything was still normal. Like she hadn't tried to assassinate my dignity in front of 20 people. I saved you a slice of that almond cake, she said sleepily. Figured you'd come back hungry. That moment confirmed it. She didn't care. Or worse, she assumed I wouldn't do anything. That she could humiliate me in public, flirt with Nico in front of my face, and I'd still return to her like some well-trained pet waiting at the door. So I played my part. I smiled back, told her thanks, even kissed her forehead. Then I went downstairs, opened my laptop, and began the quietest war I've ever fought. You see, while she was off building her emotional affair into a full-blown double life, I was paying the mortgage. I was fixing the plumbing. I was filing taxes, managing accounts, handling passwords, booking our travel. She joked often about how she married a human spreadsheet. And maybe she was right, because I knew every number, every login, every access point. By noon, I had already rerouted 2 auto deposits from our joint account into a separate one in my name only. I did it cleanly, legally. The money I'd been setting aside for our future, the one she'd quietly removed me from, was no longer part of hers. By 3 p.m., I'd signed the lease on a furnished apartment across town. A quiet place on the 4th floor with a balcony that faced west. I always liked sunsets, even if I'd stopped watching them. By dinner time, I had changed the passwords to the accounts she never touched but used constantly. Netflix, Spotify, even the grocery app. I didn't delete anything. I just reset them. Quietly. Silently. No dramatic exit. No fireworks. She texted me around 6:30 while I was carrying a box of my clothes out the back door. Hey babe, you want tacos or stir-fry tonight? I stared at the screen for a while. Not because I was unsure, but because the normalcy of it all was almost psychotic. I didn't answer. I left that house with nothing loud. I didn't leave a note. I didn't break a single dish. But I took everything I ever gave her. My presence, my reliability, my quiet support. I took my name off the Wi-Fi bill. Took the documents she never bothered to understand. Took the passwords, the banking, the home insurance, the car title, my toothbrush, my soul. And I left behind exactly what she made of me, silence. That night, I didn't sleep much. I lay on a new mattress that smelled like plastic, staring at a ceiling I didn't recognize, wondering how I ever convinced myself she loved me. At 1:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was her. For messages. Where are you? Why isn't the Wi-Fi working? Did you change the bank access? Thadwick, this isn't funny. I turned the phone over and went back to staring at the ceiling. She thought her jokes were harmless. She thought I'd never leave. She thought I didn't know. But now the only thing she knows is that I'm gone. And for the first time in years, she was the one left wondering. The next morning was the first time in years I woke up without hearing her slippers dragging across the hardwood. No clink of mugs. No blender roaring with one of her green monster smoothies. Just quiet. My new apartment smelled like nothing. The fridge was nearly empty. The closet barely held a week's worth of clothes. But for some reason, I felt more human than I had in months. I didn't go to work. I called in, told them I was dealing with a personal matter. My boss was oddly understanding, probably because I'd never once taken a sick day in 6 years. I sat on the floor of the living room for hours, laptop open, phone buzzing every so often across the room like a mosquito I didn't care to swat. By noon, Darcy had texted 9 times. All polite, all playing dumb, just checking in. Everything okay? Can you reset the router? I think you did something by accident. Babe? No questions about where I was. Just gentle manipulations wrapped in emojis and forced affection. But then, something changed around 2:47 p.m. That's when she started calling. I didn't answer. 5 missed calls in under 10 minutes. I stared at the phone until it stopped lighting up. Then it started again. And again. On the 6th attempt, she left a voicemail. I didn't want to hear it, but something made me tap play. Thadwick, what is this? Are you mad about the party? Come on. You know I didn't mean anything by it. Everyone was laughing. You always say you like when I'm funny. Babe, seriously, call me. You're freaking me out. I saved the voicemail. I don't know why. The truth was, I didn't want an apology. I didn't even want revenge. I just wanted her to feel even 1% of what she made me feel for the last year. I wanted her to sit in that silence. The one I'd lived in since the day her phone started lighting up with names I'd never heard. The one I'd swallowed every time she laughed at me in front of people who didn't even know my last name. At 4:11 p.m, she emailed me. She emailed me. Subject line: we need to talk. Please. I didn't read the whole thing. Just enough to feel her panic starting to bleed through her keyboard. I don't know what's going on. You just vanished. This isn't like you. If you're trying to punish me, can we at least talk face to face? I'm sorry if I embarrassed you. I didn't mean to. I swear. I love you. Please come home. Or at least call. No mention of Nico. Not one. She still thought this was about a party. She had no idea what I knew. She didn't know I had screenshots, not just of the messages, but of the bank transfers from her account to a wellness retreat that matched the same weekend Nico mysteriously posted a story from a cabin in the woods. She didn't know I had a copy of the hotel receipt that she left in the car console, folded under an empty gum pack. She didn't know I had spoken to one of her coworkers, one who thought we were separated and casually mentioned how great it was that Darcy had found someone who treated her like a queen. That's what burned the most. It wasn't just that she cheated. It was that she rewrote the entire narrative of our marriage to justify it. And now the cracks were spreading across her perfect little world. She thought I was weak. She thought I was just the quiet, forgiving guy who couldn't survive without her approval. But she was starting to realize something that even I hadn't accepted until that party. You can only humiliate someone for so long before they remember who they are and quietly walk away. The knock came at 8:14 p.m. 3 slow, spaced-out taps on my apartment door. Like she wasn't sure if she had the right place. Like she was stalling, hoping I'd just open it and save her from having to explain anything. I didn't move. I was sitting on the floor with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders and a cup of lukewarm tea in my hands. I stared at the door without blinking. She knocked again. Then she said my name. Quietly. Thad. I know you're in there. It hit me strange, hearing her voice like that. Not condescending. Not smug. Not curled around a joke. Just small. Raw. The version of her I hadn't heard since our first year of marriage. Back when she still asked how I was before talking about her day. I waited for her to say something else, but she didn't. No speech. No tears. Just silence behind the door, stretching into a long, unbearable nothing. Finally, after what felt like 10 minutes, I heard her whisper something I couldn't quite make out. Then her footsteps fading down the hall. I didn't follow. Didn't text. Didn't open the door to see if she had actually left. I just sat there, listening to the absence she used to fill so loudly. I didn't sleep much that night. I laid on the couch, phone face down, heart doing laps around my ribs. I kept waiting for a notification, one of those 3-paragraph monologues she used to send when she was being misunderstood. But it never came. She went quiet, which made me worry more. The next day, I drove past the house. I didn't go in. Just parked across the street like some kind of ghost. The porch light was still on. Her car was in the driveway. The curtains were open, which was strange. She always kept them shut when she was alone. And then I saw him. Nico. He stepped out the front door like he belonged there. Hoodie. Backpack. No rush. No guilt. Just casually checking his phone as he walked toward his car. That was the moment something in me went still. Not rage. Not sadness. Just a numb, hollow certainty. She didn't come looking for me because she was scared of losing me. She came because she was scared of being caught. He pulled away. She never followed him outside. And still, I didn't move. I didn't knock. I didn't call her out. I just sat in my car and watched the front door like it was the entrance to a play I'd already seen too many times. That night, She texted me just once. No emojis. No exclamation marks. We need to talk. Before it gets worse. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I replied, it's already worse. You just don't feel it yet. Then I blocked her number. No shouting. No confrontation. No dramatic exits or ultimatums. Just quiet. Just distance. Just the kind of silence that speaks louder than anything she's ever said to me. And if she thought the party was the beginning of the end, she hadn't even seen what I had planned for tomorrow. I didn't just disappear to punish her. I disappeared to prepare. The truth is, I could have burned her entire illusion to the ground the moment I walked out of that party. I had enough proof. Enough screenshots. Enough receipts to make her life very uncomfortable, very quickly. But what would that have done? She'd twist it. Make me the bitter husband. The overreactor. The guy who couldn't handle her energy. I'd seen her play that role before. All wide eyes and nervous laughter, blaming everything on miscommunication and misinterpretation. So I waited. I watched. And then I struck. Darcy had always told her coworkers we were kind of going through things, whatever that meant. Most of them assumed we were drifting apart, maybe sleeping in separate beds. But they didn't know we still shared a bank account. They didn't know the wellness retreat she went on with Nico was funded by joint savings I had built over 6 years of skipped vacations and work bonuses. And they certainly didn't know I had kept everything. I made an anonymous Dropbox folder, uploaded every screenshot, every time-stamped receipt, every message between her and Nico I had quietly pulled from our shared iCloud backups. I didn't send it to everyone. Just 3 people. Her boss, her best friend from the office, and Nico's fiancé. Yes, fiancé, who I found by cross-referencing his tagged photos on social media. Her name was Leanne. She looked like the kind of woman who'd been lied to more than once and was done playing dumb. The subject line of the email was simple. I thought you should see this before the wedding. No threats. No message. No explanation. The fallout was fast. By noon the next day, Darcy's best friend had unfollowed her on every platform. Nico's engagement photos were gone. Her boss emailed her something vague that clearly meant, we need to talk about conduct. And Darcy, started calling again. Not texting. Calling. Back to back. 17 times in a row. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to. I did. God, I wanted to hear the panic. I wanted to hear her try to scramble, explain, unravel every lie she'd been feeding everyone in her curated little kingdom. But I waited. And then, 2 days later, I walked into her workplace. No warning. No text. No appointment. I wore a clean shirt, shaved my face, and carried a manila folder with the printed copies of everything I had sent digitally. She was sitting at the front desk when I walked in. She froze. Completely. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, then flickered into panic mode. She stood up like someone had lit a match under her chair. Thadwick, she whispered, like saying my name too loud might trigger a building collapse. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't cause a scene. I simply handed her the folder and said, now everyone knows what I've known for months. And then I left. That was the first time I'd ever seen her look small in public. Not because I embarrassed her, but because she had run out of places to hide. Later that night, she showed up at my apartment. Not banging. Not yelling. Just there. Eyes red. Makeup smudged. Holding a bottle of wine like it was still 2019 and we could fix this with an awkward movie night. I didn't let her in. I just looked her in the eye and said, you joked about me like I was invisible. Now you finally get to see what that actually feels like. Then I shut the door. This time, I didn't hear her footsteps walking away. This time, she stayed outside and cried. I didn't check the peephole. I didn't need to. I knew it was her by the way the knock hesitated halfway through, like she still believed I might answer just to make things easier for both of us. The silence that followed was louder than any apology she could have offered. I let her cry out there. I let her sit against the hallway wall with her head in her hands, her perfect little world crumbling into her lap. And all I could think was, this didn't have to happen. I would have forgiven her once. I would have listened. If she had just told the truth before the lies outnumbered the days we'd even looked each other in the eye. But she didn't want forgiveness. She wanted control. She wanted me obedient, not loved. She left after an hour. Didn't say a word. No more voicemails. No more emails. Just vanished the same way I had. Except this time, she didn't leave with power. I thought that would be the end. But then came the letter. A real one. Handwritten. in her curling, rehearsed penmanship that I used to find so charming. Folded neatly inside an envelope with no return address, no decoration. Just my name, printed carefully in the center like a surrender flag. I sat on my couch and stared at it for half an hour before opening it. She didn't start with, "I'm sorry." She started with, "I don't recognize myself anymore." The letter was 5 pages long, every line dripping with regret, confusion, half-formed explanations. She said she didn't mean to fall for Nico, that it started as a distraction, a spark she thought meant she was still alive. That she convinced herself I didn't really see her anymore, because it was easier than admitting she had stopped looking at me first. She said she hated how I walked away. Not because I abandoned her, but because I didn't give her the dramatic ending she expected. Because I didn't scream. Because I didn't chase. Because I didn't give her a script to follow that would end in redemption. She said she'd lost everything. Nico was gone. Her job was on life support. Friends were taking space. Even her sister had called her cruel and asked what the hell she was thinking. But then came the line that stuck in my chest like a splinter I couldn't dig out. I was laughing because I thought the room was mine. I didn't realize until you left that it always belonged to you. I don't know what I was supposed to feel. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't even feel angry anymore. I just felt tired. Like someone who had carried a heavy backpack for years and finally set it down, only to realize his back would never fully straighten again. That night, I lit a candle. Not for closure. Not for peace. Just for light. I reread the letter once more. Folded it. Placed it in the drawer beside my bed, under the charger I no longer used because I stopped waiting for her messages. I wasn't sure what part 8 of this story would look like. Whether she'd keep reaching out. Whether I'd answer. Whether we'd sit across from each other one day and pretend to talk like strangers with too much history between them. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This time, I was the one writing the ending. Weeks passed. The silence between us stretched long, then settled. No more knocks. No more messages. No more letters. It was like the storm had finally moved out to sea, leaving debris behind, but no more thunder. The strange thing was, I didn't miss her. I missed who I thought she was. The version I had built in my head. The woman who used to blush when I brought her breakfast in bed. The one who smiled in bookstores, who doodled in the margins of grocery lists. But the real her, the one who lied, who laughed at me, who made me feel like background noise in my own life. That woman had stopped existing long before I ever walked out that party door. And somewhere in that quiet, I started to heal. I got back into sketching. Bad, crooked sketches of parks, people, cafes. Things I hadn't done in years because she always joked I drew like a bored third grader. But I liked them. They made sense to me. They were mine. I went to therapy. Not to process the betrayal, like I told the therapist, but to understand why I'd spent so long apologizing for simply existing. Why I believed I deserved to be the punchline of my own marriage. The truth hurt, but it also cracked something open. And that crack let the light back in. One Saturday morning, I ran into Leanne, Nico's ex-fiancée, at a used bookstore downtown. She was holding a copy of The Bell Jar. We locked eyes. There was no awkwardness. No pain. Just a nod of shared understanding between two people who had both been left in the dark and decided to grow anyway. We got coffee. Then we got dinner. Then we started sharing quiet Sundays, sketchbooks, playlists, inside jokes that never once had to be cruel to be funny. She never once made me feel small, and I never once had to shrink just to be allowed in the room. I never reached out to Darcy again. Never unblocked her. Never checked her socials. Not out of spite, but because the chapter was closed. And I wasn't interested in rereading it just to feel the pain again. She had sent one final letter, months later. No apology this time. Just a line that stayed with me. You were the one thing I thought I could always come back to. I never thought you'd learn to walk away. But I did. And not in rage. Not in revenge. In peace. Today, my name doesn't feel like a joke anymore. Neither does my silence. The party ended long ago. And I never needed their laughter. All I ever needed was a quiet life that loved me back.